over in Marin County, coming to Hawaii on the first stop from there to the Philippines to reinforce General MacArthur's strength over there. They said, don't worry about it. So they closed up shop, went to breakfast there, and nothing else was done. That was an hour before the attack. We were scheduled to leave the ship at 8 o'clock in the morning of December 7, 1941. We'd do a little scrimmaging, get ready for that game. There was a little field right close by, and we'd do a little scrimmaging. They wanted to make sure we had our padding on, get all ready for that game. The living compartment of the quartermasters, which I was way back in the stern of the ship, way back by the rudder, back by the propellers. That was the living compartment of the quartermasters. I had put on my uniform down there, getting ready to leave the ship in a couple minutes. About 7 minutes till 8, the phone rang. I picked up the phone. One of the fellows there that were on our gang were up on top side. They said, Japanese are attacking Pearl Harbor. I said, oh, come on. We've been talking about it. They said, forget about it. About that time, the ship shuddered. But we're sitting on blocks. Evidently, some of the people close to the guns saw what was going on. They started shooting at the planes there before the rest of the people on the ship knew what was going on. About that time, general quarters went, all hands man your battle stations there. Now, you don't have time to change clothes or anything. My battle station was up here in the crow's nest, way up here in the top there, the one that masked way to the left there. That's my battle station, way up in the crow's nest. To get up there, there's tripods to get up there. Little trap door to get up there, pull myself through there with all my padding on. I was well protected during the attack. When I got up to the crow's nest there, which was just a few minutes because you're going in a hurry, you don't waste any time. Of course, we had 1,500 people on that ship too, and you got to go, and sometimes it gets like a traffic jam. So up the crow's nest I went there. By the time I got up there, planes were buzzing around. Some of the planes were lower down than I was, because I'm about 70 feet up in the air. Planes come in low. Torpedo planes have to come in awfully low. They looked awfully close. They looked like it would be close enough to hit them with rocks. You had any rocks to throw at them. It wasn't that close, but they looked awfully close. Ships were burning. Buildings were burning. It was just like a nightmare. It's really hectic of what was going on. Japan knew where all the ships were at, but they didn't get the word that our ship was in dry dock. There had 3 attacks scheduled. One attack was mainly torpedo planes and a few bombers. The second attack was mainly bombers. And the third attack was bombers there to hit the oil tanks and the repair facilities. Evidently, there, the first attack, when it hit, it didn't get us because they didn't know where we were. The second attack, they hit us with the 500-pound, right in between those 2 masts. Horizontally, it missed me by about 45 feet. It's an armor-piercing bomb. It went through 2 decks and exploded. It shook me, but it didn't hurt me. It's kind of scary to see a big hole practically alongside of you. There was a little bit of gap. Now, the third attack was scheduled. There was no aircraft carriers in port. Admiral Halsey and his aircraft group were taking planes to Midway Island and Wake Island, so there's no aircraft carriers in port. The only thing that resembled an aircraft carrier was the USS Utah. That was an old battleship with planks on it. They used it for target practice. That was hit because that's the only thing that even resembled an aircraft carrier. I mean, planes buzzing around, they don't, they have to hit whatever they think you can. You don't have a lot of time to do thinking. The third attack was scheduled for the oil farms and repair facilities. If they would hit, due to the fact that there was no aircraft carriers in port, Admiral Nagumo, who was in charge of the Japanese fleet, decided he would leave because he didn't know where our aircraft carriers were. He decided he didn't better leave while they can. If they would hit the repair facilities and the fuel farms, I'm not sure whether we'd even want no more, because the closest repair facilities and oil farms 2,000 miles away. Wow, I just dread to think of what that would have been if we had been hit with on the oil farms and the repair facilities. We only got that one hit. The attack lasted a little less than 2 hours. Now, the aircraft carriers were scheduled to be back in port the day before, the 6th of December. But due to bad weather, they were delayed one day. They were going to come back in port on December 7th itself. Now, what they do when they're coming back into port, the planes take off from the aircraft carriers, land at the air station, wherever they're going to be, and when the aircraft carriers leave in port, then they'd catch them out at sea, land, and they'd be back together. So, that night, about 8:30 that night, some of their planes start coming in. Everybody starts shooting. Everybody's shooting. It's on enemy planes coming in. We hit at least five of our own aircraft before they got the word they were our own aircraft. Stopped shooting. About 1 o'clock that night, we got the word. Everybody go to down the Army, get rifles and ammunition there, because we're going to send our crew ashore to help the landing people repel the invasion of Japan, because they figured there's all kinds of rumors going on. They're going to invade the island there. When I think about us sailors don't get much training with rifles there. It would be a detriment, I think, if we got out there with rifles there. But fortunately, it was a rumor. Nothing happened on it. We got patched up enough. You know, a lot of the ships got hit. There was 8 battleships in port at that time. At that time, the strength of the Navy were battleships. We had 8 of them in port there. We figured we would take on anybody that wanted to give any kind of argument there. But we found out the aircraft, from then on, the aircraft carriers were the strength of the Navy. We got patched up enough. In the meantime, on the 8th of December, Franklin Delano Roosevelt got Congress to declare war on Japan. Everybody was united. We had gas rationing, cigarette rationing, butter rationing, tire rationing, all kinds of stuff was going on, but everybody was for it because we were attacked there. We had blocks and blocks of lines of people ready to enlist in the service because we were attacked there. It wasn't like any of these wars we've been having lately there. The country was united. Something else started. The men were gone because they were already going into the service. So the women picked up the slack. They went to work in the aircraft carriers, they went to work in the shipyards, welding, everything else there, working on guns, tanks there, and really did the work because the men were already gone. That really helped us during the war. They built ships in the record time days instead of months, and it was really something. Rosie the Riveter is what they were called. The women went to work because up to that time they were just housewives maintaining a home. Morale was very bad. April of 1942 came. Morale was very bad because Germany is having its way over in Europe and Japan is having its way in the Pacific. Morale was very, very bad. They devised a plan. I'm not sure just who suggested it, but they found a man by the name of Jimmy Doolittle. He was an Air Force pilot. They devised a system where they would have 16 bombers on an aircraft carrier, the USS Hornet, not the one that's in Almeida now. It's the first Hornet. They devised it so they would have those 16 bombers get fairly close to Japan, bomb Tokyo, and then go right on to China and land. In fact, the Chinese were already set up for it there. It's really a secret mission. They're going to have landing places for bombers to land. Unfortunately, the fleet was detected by fishing boats, and they reported there that the fleet was coming in that area. So what they did, they had take off a lot earlier. They didn't get as close to land as they had planned on. But they did. They took off from Tokyo. A few of them got to China, but not many of them. And they did, they really were in trouble. A lot of them run out of gas due to the extra miles that they had to drive. It didn't do much damage to Japan, but it did two things. First thing, Japan knew that maybe they aren't as safe as they thought. So they pulled a lot of their troops, planes, and ships back to the homeland because they would need them back there in case they were attacked. Another thing, it helped the morale of the United States people. We were fighting back there. So that really was a point there that really inspired the whole country. Another thing, Japan figured at least they would give it another try to invade the Hawaiian Islands. They figured still if they take the Hawaiian Islands that we would give up. So they had the Battle of Midway. And Battle of Midway was a couple months later. Unfortunately for the Japanese, 4 of the bigger aircraft carriers, which 4 of the 6 that they used during the attack on Pearl Harbor were sunk at the Battle of Midway. Many people call that the turning point of the war. A lot of their good pilots were lost during the Battle of Midway. We got patched up enough because when we got hit, the bomb hit way inboard there. It didn't hurt us in the water, it had integrity. So we were in Bethlehem Steel there in San Francisco Bay. Got fixed up enough. The latter part of 1942 and 1943, we decided we're strong enough, we're going to fight back. My ship was an old ship built in 1916. We do 50 knots downhill with the tailwind. We didn't have the speed there, so we couldn't keep up with aircraft carriers, so they used us for fire support. The first invasion of North Pacific was Attu, which is the westernmost part of the Aleutian Islands, way out there, the closest to Asia. My ship was used for fire support. Japan had already taken over Kiska, which is another island, but further in towards the main part of Alaska. We bombarded Kiska, finally sent troops ashore. All we found is one dog, because Japan evidently there figured when they lost Attu, they better give up on Kiska too. So they did quit and left. Only left a dog there. Next thing was invasion of Makin Island, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Palau, Saipan. We started skipping islands. We didn't invade all the islands. We did kind of blockaded a lot of them there. We didn't invade all the islands there. Attu, Makin, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Palau, Saipan, and Guam. And then we went from there to the Philippines. Now, the invasion of the Philippines was, the first one was Leyte, that big gulf on the eastern part of Leyte Gulf. It's a huge gulf. All kinds of ships were in there, some of them fire supporting for the troops on land, and some of them were supplying supplies to the troops itself, and all kinds of ships were there. About that time, Japan was getting quite desperate. They started something called kamikazes. Kamikazes are planes there that they usually use for one-way trips, dying for the emperor. That was the most glorious thing for a lot of them there. And we're all steaming around there, and nobody angry because it's a deep place. One of the kamikaze planes hit the Abner Reed, one of the destroyers. Everybody's at battle stations. When it hit the Abner Reed, it set off her torpedoes. Her torpedoes start coming out throughout the ships out there. At that time, my battle station was steering that 33,000-ton battleship there. I thought that's pretty good for a farm boy, that big a ship. We're steering this way. All at once we see a torpedo wake coming from over this direction over here. So the captain says, hard right rudder, steer for that torpedo wake. Give it at least